Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Caniglio.
And I'm Marnie Stockman, and this is the Lead It Like Lasso Rewatch Podcast. We are the co-authors of Lead It Like Lasso, a leadership book for life, your life.
And as you know by now, we never believed that the show Ted Lasso is about soccer. It truly is a show about leadership, coaching, and culture. And we're going to dive into each episode and tell you what we found. And for today's episode, we're diving into season 4, episode 3, Richmond's Got Talent. So, Marnie, before we get into the summary, your thoughts? Did episode 3 continue the momentum that we picked up on after episode 2?
Oh, 100%. Yes. It feels like we're back in Richmond now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to call back to the title itself. Richmond's Got Talent. Obviously, it's playing off of the show Britain's Got Talent. We get references to Susan Boyle. It's becoming a running joke, really, in the show. And ultimately, I think it's a little bit of foreshadowing for Gemma, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But why don't you start us with the show summary?
Yeah, so, we start because Richmond has a striker problem. We start with one of a dozen or more F-bombs. I started tally marking them. So Richmond has a striker problem. One's injured, one's pregnant. And so when Alice sarcastically suggests open tryouts, Ted and Beard actually go ahead and take her seriously. And we see some familiar faces in the tryouts. Shannon is there from last season. We're excited. We thought we might get to see her. Danny Rojas's real and fictional sister, as well as Lizzie, who in fact earns herself a spot. Meanwhile, Richmond Women's FC faces another major challenge when the Higgins report leaks and Pinter and Sons pulls its sponsorship. Keeley has problems of her own when the kits don't arrive in time for their first match, and Rebecca is struggling to find balance between Richmond, Keeley, and her relationship with Matisse. Ted and Alice try to unsuccessfully recruit Gemma, but as you said, she eventually decides to give football another chance. And thanks to her, some homemade kits and a little Richmond belief, the Lady Greyhounds win their first match, much to May's approval.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Initial reactions.
My first is that the women's team, I think, finally is starting to feel a little real, right? The first episode, it was a concept, right? The second episode, we started meeting some characters. And the third episode, I'm starting to feel like it's a team, right? We're starting to see the personalities with Boots and, Lizzie, great introduction. Shannon's back. We've got Gemma, of course, the twins. And it feels like, now there's an actual team. So that was my first reaction. How about you?
Oh yeah, and I'm a fan of Lizzie.
Yeah.
And her interaction with the twins, you and I talk about all the time. The subtitle of the book is Leadership is Life, right? And we talk about all the time how you don't have to have a title to be a leader, and how being a mom is very much a leader, or a dad, right? Parenting is leadership. And so it was really no surprise that she was like, not going to put up with this twins business. We need to be a team. So I'm excited to see where Lizzie goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shannon, I don't want to take a victory lap. It was probably pretty obvious, but I predicted last week that she would be back. But I love the way they did it. They made it a little bit interesting, right? She doesn't really seem to be good enough. Alice says no, Beard says no, and Ted says yes anyway. And I think we're going to be talking about, that's on my list of things to talk about from a leadership perspective.
Yeah. So in general, I think fans of the space are fans of this episode.
Yeah, I completely agree. What about Easter eggs, callbacks, pop culture?
Well, the very first obvious thing was Good Will Hunting, Billy Elliot and Susan Boyle, in terms of, some pop culture references. Susan Boyle, I immediately remembered which one she was from Britain's Got Talent. Funny how Ted and Beard knew, of course, right away, but Ted had to figure it out. In that same scene, Ted's chair is lower and he has to raise it.
Uh-huh.
I don't know where that's going. I know somebody online posted that they felt like his assistant manager tag on the very first episode showed that the whole season was going to be him agreeing to be assistant manager and Alice manager in the long term.
Yeah.
And he's got this lower seat. I don't know where it's going, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't catch up on that. I thought it was interesting with the Susan Boyle thing, right? It was actually foreshadowing, right? As Ted's actually watching the video for the first time, discovering who she is, Gemma immediately walks through the door, right? Unknown talent. So as usual, they get it right. A couple of things that I picked up on, you know, it's the hope that kills you, right? It's and Rebecca had a play on that. It's the hope that has you down 4,000 pounds. I love the fact that they called back to the Richmond shareholders, right? It's a payoff. I think a couple of seasons in the making. You know, Rebecca promised that, and we see that happening with the first meeting. Of course, we have Maria Rojas. You mentioned her in the summary. How did you think that played out?
So it wouldn't have made sense for her to come be the same star with Danny Rojas energy. So they brought some elements of Danny with the enthusiasm, but a very different way. And I think a lot of this episode was about you can be more than one thing, right? Gemma's going to be, she's going to try to balance a lawyer and football. And so when she said, Danny taught me everything he knows, she referenced all of these other things that he is good at. And he's not just about football, which I think was a great.
Yeah. And she says life is so much more than football. Again, calling back to what we talk about in our book, right? Leadership is life. And I love that Ted says, not as catchy, but true.
But true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Side note on the Susan Boyle, the song at the end of the show was the song that Susan Boyle sang, I Dream a Dream.
Yeah.
So I think that's very fun.
Yeah, I thought that was fantastic.
The moment Ted said the word gather you rosebuds, I said, all right, Google, give me what you got. Did you look up that?
Do tell. I did not. Do tell.
Okay. So gather ye rosebuds while you may is the rest of the quote. It is from a Robert Herrick poem called To the Virgins to Make Much of Time. And it essentially means seize the day because time passes, carpe diem. And I heard a podcast this week where Beard and Ted, Brendan Hunt and Jason Sudeikis were talking about Easter eggs. And they specifically said there's always something on the whiteboard. So when Ted and Beard were in the office and Alice was putting the players on the board, they panned from Ted to Beard and a whiteboard pass. So I rewound a few times to see what it said. And it just said, today is the day. And at the time, I hadn't Googled yet. So I just thought it meant today is the big day, the game day. But in fact, I think it is seize the day. Today is the day. Grab your time now.
And I think that proves that you are in the Premier League of Ted Lasso watching, and I'm like in the 6 and under league of packs following balls. That's a great call out. So I'll come up with the obvious because that seems like what I do. Well, one not so obvious. I don't know if you picked up on it in the shareholder meeting, but the question that was asked to Roy about, hey, your contract's up at the end of the year. I think that's going to be a big play, and actually that'll be one of my predictions at the very end of the show. That'll mean something very significant, even though they kind of glossed over it in this episode. So I think that's a future callback. But what I really, I don't know, enjoyed is not the right word, but the Vanity Fair article that kept popping up, right? Roy brings it up. He brings it up again. The delivery driver recognizes Keeley from it, right? And what's interesting is Keeley wants nothing to do with it. and Roy is not really understanding why. And I think it's the why is because that was the moment their relationship started falling apart.
When I think she is also doubting herself. So to have someone put you on a pedestal and assume it's going to be okay when you're not feeling that way doesn't feel good. She's got this awkward imposter syndrome that's not she's not
I
sure about
agree, and I think we'll talk about that. And I think that's the obvious reason, but I think it's really a
it. Oh,
lead
you think
into, okay, Roy, you keep bringing this up. Everybody keeps bringing up, and it's because of their relationship. That's my 2 cents worth. That's
oh
kind of
well
a
that'd be
prediction.
great because I think we all want Roy and Keeley to get back together. I
Well,
love how
sure.
Roy's trying, but there'll be more
Yeah.
on that. I don't know if you noticed, but when Gemma first played in the game, she did the hand like kick it to me like Jamie Tart did, like pass it to me, pass it to me. But she did it once. She got the pass, she made the play. So she doesn't need the hoopla of Jamie Tart, but she's got mad skills. That's what I thought that. And she did it in the game when Alice went and watched her as well.
Yep. Yep. She's the Susan Boyle of soccer, football. Anything else before we move on to leadership insights?
Um, well, I think Roy and Phoebe, I was so happy to see Phoebe on the screen. I wasn't sure she was going to be in the episode. And I think that she's going to have a great way of using her growing teen self to put Roy in his place in a different way. Yeah. So that was, I mean, not necessarily a callback, but kind of because I was really excited that she and her mom, Roy's sister, were there and they're part of the scene.
Yeah, and kind of an in episode callback, right? She established her creativity with the socks that she gave to Roy, and then after Roy repeatedly messed up, and I think one of the other characters, you mentioned this on the outset, was the F word, right?
Oh
The
gosh.
show starts with it, with the striker being pregnant. Roy uses it in different contexts throughout the show, like I messed up, I messed up, I messed up, and then he uses it like, oh, I get it, and then he used it as encouragement when he handed
Yep.
the Jones report over to Keeley at the very end,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I thought that was very. They always find clever ways to use the F word. Thankfully, we're a PG rated show. Otherwise, somebody would have to say it. So, bring me some
Yeah.
leadership insights, Barney. Tell me where you want to start, because there's a lot of them in this show.
Okay. Well, you know, we ask teenagers this all the time when we're talking to them about would you invest in yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a leadership element of what are you willing to invest in before you're positive it's going to work.
Yep. Yeah. I think.
So, what say you on this one?
Well, yeah. I think I think there's a couple of different angles to that. I'll kind of take my first angle with that. I really had two. One is around belief, which is obviously a common theme in the show, but I'm going to take it from the angle that Rebecca had with the CEO of,
Pinter?
of Pinter and Sons, right? And that is that life really is a series of chances. I think Rebecca says, right, sport is a chance, life is a chance. Richmond is taking a chance on the women's team, but it was more than that, right? Ted's taking a chance on Shannon. He's taking a chance on Alice. Alice is eventually taking a chance on Gemma. Gemma is taking another chance on football, right? And Pinter is taking another chance on Richmond. So, you know, I'm coming out from the angle that leadership is often about seeing the possibilities before there's proof. And, would you invest yourself? That's really the first thing that comes to my mind when you talk about, would you invest in yourself? Sometimes that means taking a chance. And as I see your reaction to that, I feel like you're coming at it from a completely different angle.
No, I agree with all of that. I thought, Gemma had to decide to take a chance on her potential, like you said. And Richmond is being asked to invest in potential,
Yeah.
the shareholders in general. So I agree on all of that.
Yeah. Um, what I thought was interesting, so I believe and believe, but that's another story for another time. But belief is really a big part of that. And last week we talked about stories, right? Sometimes are more important than the data itself, and I think that was a continuation. We saw kind of a continuation of that this week, right? Sometimes belief means overruling the data, just like stories are more powerful than data, right? And Shannon was the perfect example, right? Alice was no, Beard was no, evidence said no, Ted said yes, right? And it doesn't automatically mean that Ted is correct, um, which is an interesting question that I asked myself, and I don't know if I have an answer for this. So I'm going to ask you this question. When is believing in someone leadership versus when is it favoritism? That's always kind of a
Oh,
tough line to draw for me.
so it's interesting you say that because there was sort of a nepotism piece almost with Danny Rojas' sister, right?
Yep.
Sight unseen, Beard would have just taken her,
Yep.
assuming some things. And I think that is, you have to be aware of that as a leader because that can be dangerous for the person that you're putting in that place,
Yeah.
right? My first year teaching, 14 days into my first year teaching, my high school teacher that had written all of my letters of recommendation, including the one to get the job I was sitting in, became the principal of my school. So I'm 21, a brand new teacher, and she says to the faculty room on the first day, like, "Oh, and Marnie was one of my favorite students ever." And they immediately are like, "Oh, Marnie, the teacher's pet," type of thing.
Yep.
And so that didn't, you then are put in this different position to have to deal with that. So I think that's a really interesting question to ask is, Rebecca picked Ted, favoritism or a leadership move, right? She
Yep.
had reason to believe it happened. And I think the biggest theme of this entire episode is change management in general. And I think that when you take someone that other people don't understand, they have to change their mindset and you need to think about how that looks for others.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I think that to some extent it's it's experience, learned experience, right? And Ted, he knows that he has experience bringing people. There is a word of caution there, though, right? Is sometimes you're not successful, and I love your take in that it's as dangerous for the person who is picking the the individual, the candidate, to do something as it is for the actual candidate because you put them in a very unsafe position potentially that that could mean trouble. And speaking of unsafe, there was one line in the show that Keeley said when she was speaking with Roy um, that stuck with me. And she said, women just don't get friendlies. We either succeed or fail, and that is it, right? And part of me says, absolutely. There is truth to that, but I think there's a bigger leadership conversation there about people who don't feel they have the luxury of failing safely. um, in this case, the friendly means it's an experiment. You learn, you fail, you adjust, you try again. Um, but Keeley doesn't believe that the women team really has that luxury. And we talk a lot about psychological safety and what that means. And it's true, uh, you know, in many different scenarios. This is just one example. But I look forward to seeing how Rebecca and AFC Richmond provide continue to provide that that feeling of psychological safety for Keeley to ultimately thrive and everybody to thrive in what's ahead.
Well, Richmond certainly hasn't provided, the
No, they haven't.
shareholders have not provided psychological safety at all. So that, I think, is a great way to lead into, can we talk about change management for a bit?
Yeah.
Because the whole notion of a whole new women's team, right, is change management. A new anything is, from a leadership perspective, any big change requires a thoughtful way to go about it. We have had Mary Lippitt on our podcast, so I'm going to quote a Mary Lippitt, the Lippitt-Noster model of change management, which says that there are 5 things that your team, a company, AFC Richmond, needs in order for change to be successful. They have to have vision, the why. They have to have the skills to make it happen. They have to have the right incentives. They have to have the right resources, and they have to have the right action plan. And if any of those things go wrong, it causes confusion, anxiety, resistance, frustration, or false starts. And I think a lot of the characters actually show those different feelings, and we work through each of them. I really think that this whole thing is a lesson in change management. I could go on for days. I have a whole nother page on how it does. So you can tell me to stop talking or like go on, tell me more.
No, I mean, you're free to tell me more. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, in more of a Nick explanation of change management, is how important communication is. So I'm going to let you get back.
I got a whole page on communication.
Yeah, I would let you get back to your notes on change management, but I do want to throw in communication real quick, because I thought it was ironic a little bit, right? That the whole shareholder meeting messed up. Keeley found out about the plan, the report, the Higgins report, and she went along with it. And it was a bit odd that Rebecca didn't talk to her, didn't call her. Instead, she texted her, right? And then there was that point of, oh my gosh, she's typing, she's not typing. She finally gets the thumbs up. But later in the show, when she goes to meet the CEO of Pinter and Sons, right, the CEO there specifically says, I can't believe you came all the way out here, right? The professionalism and personalization of Rebecca going to see her was something that she really appreciated. And I just thought it was completely ironic that in this one episode, they didn't really bring up the fact that something seemed so obvious that she would have the conversation with Rebecca. They just showed her texting. And then they pointed out the fact that the face-to-face communication was really what was needed, and it ended with ultimately success.
Yeah, so I wrote down almost at the outset, no communication is worse than bad communication. Even standing up Matthias repeatedly, like, not cool. And, we've talked about under stress, when are you not the best version of yourself? And what does that turn into? So for Rebecca, it has turned into, like, she knew she was wrong, which is why she bought Keeley a gift. Speaking of callback, how about trying to love bomb Keeley?
That's a good
right?
one right there, yeah.
Who's not going to have any of it. She's going to return it and pay herself back for the towels, that she wanted. So I thought that was a clear one. And yeah, I mean, that put Keeley in a terribly awkward situation. And I have notes also on the professionalism and personalization. This is what the world is desperately in need of. Think about Keeley and the delivery company, and him asking her for the customer satisfaction survey when they haven't done so many opportunities. There were lots of failures around, there's a failure to communicate happened multiple times.
Do you think that Derek from the delivery company that they mentioned 4 or 5 times that we never saw is going to end up being the Derek that managed, was it Taste of Athens? Wasn't Derek Jade's boss?
You're kidding.
The name Derek is familiar, and I immediately thought it was Jade's boss, and I was waiting to see him, but I may be off there. I'm just curious.
Well, that'd be crazy. I don't know. With this show, like they're so good. There could be a connection. I didn't pick up on that, but I did wonder because they specifically named him a few times. So who is this Derek?
Yeah. I think we'll meet him, and I'm guessing it's going to be the same guy, but I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time.
Can I chat on change management for a hot minute?
Yes, please go back to that. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, all good. So AFC Richmond, the shareholders, are in this state of confusion as to why they should do this, right? They don't believe in the why. I'm all for Simon Sinek's. If they believe in your why, they'll buy your what. They're not buying the what yet. Mm-hmm. And so according to the change management model, that means they're lacking the vision. And so they need to understand what that is. So they're going to have to start believing along the way, to your mention of belief, or they're not going to get behind the team. So they need to start to believe. And Rebecca kind of explained that to the woman at Pinter of how, like, we have to get behind that for sure. It's interesting. The other things that impact the ability to make change, skills, right? Does Gemma have the skills? If she's resistant to coming back, anybody that's resistant is like they're questioning their own skills, versus, so that can cause anxiety. It's interesting. Do people have the right incentives to do the right things? That's the Pinter at first didn't have the right incentive, right? Because they were not willing to do it. And Rebecca had to reframe the way they're thinking about it. Keeley doesn't have the right resources, which is making change hard. And then, there were some false starts, and maybe we still have some false starts because Ted Beard and Alice need a full team, and we were looking for that striker. So I think that's just an important, if you listen to us because you like to think about leadership, I think change management is critically important. If you just like to listen because you want to hear Roy cuss, then we can go back to how about commissioning the Jones report?
Yeah, I mean that was just fantastic, right? And you're Keeley F and Jones, right? I was waiting for them to say that this time. He didn't use that exact phrase, but simply said 2 words: F them, right? I believe in you, Keeley. You are what's the phrase? Woman on
oh yeah, on top, woman on top.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was moving, and I thought it also showed, again, it goes back to our theme before of belief. But it feels like you have more to say on that before I jump to the next topic.
Well, I have to laugh that you say it was moving, because I was like, dagnammit, there it is. That's when I'm going to cry. And I did. The second time I watched it, I also cried when May was super cheerful about AFC Richmond. But I think what Roy did, he did it both in the shareholders meeting and then again by commissioning the Jones report. He said to Marty McFly, he called him Roy, and he said, "What did you call me?" And he said, "Coach Ken." So you don't have to take it from everybody. Mm-hmm. You don't have to listen and let it impact you. You get to decide who gets to give you feedback that you're going to take and own. And, Keeley mentions, like, yeah, as a woman on the internet, I'm used to people saying negative things about me. And his commissioners, his commissioned report is basically like, yeah, you don't have to listen to anybody else. Listen to those who know you, trust you, and care for you. F them. Yep. So I thought that those two were his way of saying, yeah, you don't have to listen to just any old nonsense.
Yeah. And I since you just another thing, we continue to see how much Roy has learned over the last 3 years since we've been back, right? He is, he obviously was not getting, and he was saying the wrong thing, putting his foot in his mouth many times over, but he was learning and he was listening. And I again, it's very much a continuation of the arc that Roy went in through the first 3 seasons.
You had said, didn't you say last week that Roy was the Ted?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And again, Roy is like creating resources for Keeley, removing obstacles, so he's picking up. And maybe that's why Ted's sitting in a lower seat along the way, because he's training other people to do those things. Rebecca's holding the vision and carrying it forward. She's really starting to believe that. So it's interesting.
Brilliant. So let me switch gears a little bit. I mean, last week, I think we leaped, or maybe I leaped heaped a lot of praise on Coach Chilton, Alice Chilton, right? And I started to, she's interesting, right? And one of the things that I took away is with her interaction with Gemma, and we come to understand their background and experience. But she basically, we got the impression she treats everyone the same, right? And from her perspective, that means that she is actually being fair. But you look at it from Gemma's perspective, right? Saying, okay, that's not how I experienced you, right? And I think the lesson there is intent doesn't always necessarily mean impact, right? Alice's intention was to push everybody, and Gemma's reaction to that was that you singled me out. And I think that's an important distinction, and it's important to realize that both can be true. And I think what we're going to find is that Alice's growth is going to be for her to really learn that treating everyone identically isn't necessarily good leadership. And I think so many people do think that that's good leadership. I'm fair. I equally oppress or insult or push everybody the same way. And that's one of the biggest things that I think she's going to learn from Ted, because Ted really excels at adapting to people, where it seems like Alice is expecting people to adapt to her, and those eventually always end up colliding. So just an observation with Coach Chilton.
I was thinking about her as well, especially at the end where everyone is congratulating Gemma on her goal, and she says, next time follow your shot.
Yep.
And what I think is interesting is that maybe she is also saying, you're taking a shot at soccer. Take it, believe in yourself.
Yeah. I like that.
That's, I would like you to believe that initially with Alice's behavior, maybe not. What I find interesting, so many parallels talked about online about Roy and Alice, is that Alice picked up not where Roy was at the beginning, but a little closer to where he was. So she already understands Ted and Beard's communication style and runs with it. So she adds Susan Boyle in and then says to Ted, I have to look up your references. You look up mine, right? And then when she sticks her tongue out and, Beard's like, yes, you can tell she gets us, right? We've already found a way to work together. You look like you have something for that.
Yeah, I wrote that down specifically. I think in the this isn't necessarily leadership, but in the first 3 seasons, right, it was Ted speaking and Beard translating. And what they've established for this season is Ted and Alice are kind of speaking and translating in real time, and Beard is our confirmation, right? He's just like points it, right? Good point, Ted, or good point, Alice.
What she said,
yeah, and I think that's kind of fascinating.
Where do I have my note? Oh, all right, leadership lesson, big time. I'll take care of it. So Keeley, when June comes in, first there's a whole leadership lesson around not wanting to give bad news. Rebecca didn't want to give bad news, which is why she never told Keeley about the report, and it bit her. June doesn't like giving bad news. But when she came into Keeley said, we're a team. I'll take care of this. She went from we to me immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that ownership versus responsibility. In one of the leadership trainings that we've just done, we looked at Jocko Willnick's book, Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership. And the problem with extreme ownership is you start thinking, I have to do all the things myself, and you lose the team of it. So there's a balance of these things. And I thought that, of course, Ted helping Henry with his tie. He didn't say, I'll do it for you. He said, I'll be your mirror.
Yeah.
And he put a tie on and let Henry mirror his actions. So it's do I give a man a fish, or do I, he learns to fish. Do I teach him how to fish? And it's really, Henry, do I tie his tie, or do I teach him how to tie his tie? And so I think that is a critical piece of that ownership versus responsibility for something.
Yeah. And I love the fact that they explicitly called out the mentorship, and when just on that same thing, and June clearly, I mean, I think they put a name to her, right? You're my mentor, and at the absolute worst time, she asked for a coffee meeting, and Keeley, I thought her response was funny. That's a very interesting time for you to ask me for that chat, because all her world was collapsing at that point. But it's a good reminder, I think, right, that, and this builds on, I think, what you said, that mentorship is obviously important. We talk about the importance of it from both perspectives in both of our books, right? Being a mentor and the notion of reverse mentoring, because mentors can learn from the people that they're mentoring, the mentees. But it happens, when things go wrong. It just doesn't happen when you schedule a meeting with somebody, and you constantly have to be aware of that. And the whole notion of, okay, I'll take care of it, right? After saying we're a team, just like you said, that is not necessarily the move of what you're trying to do as a mentor, just taking care of it for somebody else. I realize it was a very unique situation, but I think the message there is, mentorship, it can happen, and it usually does happen, and the mentees learn the most when things are not going great.
So two things with that. First, I definitely had a boss who said, Marnie, you're the person who, if you want something done right, you do it yourself, but that doesn't scale. Mm-hmm. So the only way you're going to be able to grow a team is to train everybody to do it. So you can't take that, I'll just do it myself attitude. And then the second was when Keeley said, what an interesting time, to ask for mentorship. I thought, oh, it's like somebody sliding into your LinkedIn DMs and saying, oh, will you be my mentor? Wait, I'm sorry, what? We don't, where is this coming from? A lot of that cold calling type of transaction is what that felt like.
Yeah. Yeah. What else did you have? Anything? I mean, literally, we can talk about this for days. We've hit most of the major points on my list.
Yeah, we had, one other thing that I really liked is, so stories have become important again, like Gemma's story, was sort of a balance. It wasn't just about the stats, but I thought that when Lizzie showed up and had her kid with her, and Beard looked up, and you thought, okay, what is this going to be? And he said, my mom was a bartender.
Yeah.
And I thought, all right, Beard, well played, of we get this. I think a big theme, I think, is work-life balance. It is Rebecca trying to figure out how to have a relationship. It is, a mom on the team. It is Gemma doing law school, and this. I think the work-life balance piece is going to be a major theme. If we're moving to predictions, I think that's going to be a major theme moving forward.
I like it. And to your point earlier, I can already tell Lizzie is going to be a fan favorite, in my opinion.
Oh, and I'm a fan of Lizzie already. Yeah,
absolutely going. I believe she is going to be the Isaac of this season, right? She's going to be the captain of the team. I don't think that's a that's a huge prediction. I think they're laying the foundation for that for sure. So I'll go out a little more on the cliff with one of my predictions, and I believe that Beard and Alice they're gonna become a thing. I think we're starting to
A
see
thing?
a thing. Something's happening. I don't know if it's romantic, just kindred weirdos. But it's given us little subtle
I had
reactions
said
to.
boots last time, but okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay. Well, I contradicted you. I'm sorry, but
That's totally allowed. And like Boots is a player, but interesting with Alice. So tell me more.
I just their interactions. It's kind of awkward, kind of weird. It's a little flirty, but not really. It may be nothing. Maybe they're just both. We know Beard's weird, right? But I do, to your point earlier, I love the fact that we saw a little more of Beard, talking about his history, showing some empathy. I love the fact that he got his hair cut and he cut his beard. He's back to normal beard.
It
His
just felt like you
excitement
were
with
back to it. Yeah,
Maria and Danny's sister. I thought this was a good Beard episode. I'll say that.
I agree. I will be curious how Jane, if we're looking at predictions, how does that pop back in? Um, because they don't leave anything.
Yeah.
They don't have like real throwaway elements of the show.
Yeah.
So at some point, we're going to get back to Beard.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I have another big prediction. I mentioned it earlier. With the Roy's contract ending.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
I think, and it's interesting the way they've kind of set up this episode and the previous one with Roy and Keeley. I think season 4 is going to be Roy's last season as a major character in this series. I think he may come back as a cameo. I think people have talked about, oh my gosh, are they Roy and Keeley? Are they going to get back together? Are they not? There's no way they can carry that over 3 seasons. So I think they're setting
Yeah,
it
it's either
up for.
make it one way or the other.
I think they're going to get back together, and I think for some reason Roy is going to leave AFC Richmond and not be a primary character of the show. Now, the Nielsen metrics and ratings would probably say you're silly, stupid, Nick. There's no way that's going to happen, but I think that's what they're setting up.
Well, that is true that you do think, okay, long term, how can that is not sustainable with that as a theme for, especially because we've already done a Roy Keeley arc.
Yep.
So what does that turn into? Boy, I know the internet and I want them to get together. And that would be the only way people would let Roy Kent go.
Yeah.
But then what are season 5 and 6? Because we know we have them planned.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay, all we can say is get your family, friends, and strangers to watch the show so that Apple decides to pick it up for another season, because we have to know.
I think that ship has already sailed. I think, given the ratings. But I'm going to go with another one, since all of a sudden now I'm a relationship expert.
Great. Is it with Rebecca and Matthias?
It's with Rebecca and Matthias. Matthias. I call him M in my notes.
Okay, I like
should
that.
say the Flying Dutchman. How about that? I thought it was interesting, just the way they portrayed it. I mean, normally you always see the male CEO, right, being too busy for a relationship at home, and they flipped that on its head, which is great, because that can and does happen. But I think they're spelling trouble for these two, and I'm going to go back to my relationship prediction from either week 1 or week 2, which is I think Ted and Rebecca ultimately, by the end of season 6, they will get together. I'm calling it again.
I thought that some of this is knowing the real life version of these folks from what you see on the internet, and how often was he in filming, right?
Yeah.
And so I wondered, okay, is this how they decide to end that? And remember last week I talked about the boy who cried wolf, and that Alice was no, no, no. And, she was trying to interrupt Rebecca. And when she finally did get to have her say, it was something different than Rebecca had expected. So I was thinking, boy who cried wolf again. Rebecca says she'll show up, she'll show up, she'll show up. And then he did actually show up. And I was like, are you playing us again? Are they actually going to stay together? I'm not sure. So I'll be curious. I'm not as invested in whether that one plays out or not as I am with Roy and Keeley.
Yeah. Well, I'm rooting for you and everybody else who's going for that. You have any other off the wall crazy predictions?
I don't think that I do. I am curious what is in May's history that has her so enthusiastic about this. Whereas, so that's just, I kind of like that May, again, is a main-ish character, but maybe has a different purpose in this one. That'll be intriguing.
She reminds me a little bit, we talk about that viral YouTube video, The First Follower.
Oh, yes.
I view her as kind of, I mean, she's the one that's dancing on the hill, and people are going to start joining her just because.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is a great leadership clip to show your teams, by the way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I think we end the same way. That's our whistle, as Roy would say. This game's over, but the leadership lessons keep on playing.
Yeah, we'd love for you to follow along. Give us a like, a comment, a subscribe. Tell us what you would like to hear about, because for sure we're listening online, and we'll chat about it next week. You can find us at Lead It Like Lasso or leaditlikelasso.com.
Yeah. So until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and always keep leading it like Lasso.